Hello, everyone, and welcome to P&P Live. We're so excited to have you here in this new format where we can still bring you all the amazing events that Politics and Prose is known for, but this time just in the comfort of your own home. As the internet can be a little unpredictable, just bear with us if we run into any technical difficulties, and we'll work as fast as we can to get everything back up and running for you. A couple things before we start the program. At any time during the event, you can click on the green button below to purchase tonight's book, and that will go directly to Politics and Prose's website. And through at least March 31st, you get free shipping on all orders, so feel free to stock up. We really appreciate your purchases. It's the way that we are still able to bring you events like this. And our small business, as I'm sure you know, is getting hit especially hard during this crazy time. So we really appreciate all the support you guys have given us. Also, just like our in-person events, you will be able to ask the author a question. If you look at the bottom of your screen, it says ask a question. It looks like some of you have already submitted, which is amazing. You can read others' questions before you submit, and you can also vote on the questions that you would like to see answered, which is really helpful for the author so she can kind of make sure that she's answering the questions that everybody wants to hear. A reminder that unlike our in-person events, the author, the host, and other audience members cannot see you. So feel free to get comfortable, no judgment, grab a cup of tea and get comfortable. Finally, we just want to thank you for being here with us tonight. Like I said, small businesses and especially independent bookstores are getting hit so hard right now. And we're just really thankful to have this incredible community surrounding us. And it's really keeping both our spirits and our business afloat. And we just can't thank you enough for everything you all have done to keep us here. Okay, now on to the event that you're all here for. In 2018, New York Times bestselling author N.K. Jemisin became the first author to win 3 Best Novel Hugo Awards in a row for her Broken Earth trilogy. She also has won a Nebula Award, 2 Locus Awards, and countless other honors that I would be here all night if I went into. Following her celebrated story collection, How Long Till Black Future Month, now comes The City We Became, the first in a new trilogy that asks the question, what if a city had a soul? In an NPR review of the book, Steve Mullis wrote, N.K. Jemisin is crushing it. This book is a love letter, a celebration, and an expression of hope and belief that a city and its people can and will stand up to darkness, will stand up to fear, and will, when called to, stand up for each other. And I think there is nothing more timely than a book like that. So without further ado, it is my pleasure to bring N.K. Jemisin onto your screens and into your homes.
Hi there. Thank you for that introduction. And welcome folks from Politics and Prose. I hope that you are weathering the situation pretty well. So I'm going to be reading to you from The City We Became. Those of you that already have a copy of the hardcover, just a quick thing I want to remind you of. If you download Google Lens and look at this little thing, look at the front and back of the cover with it, you'll see that Orbit added some cool augmented reality things to the cover. So I've been enjoying the heck out of that all day. Anyway, so I'm going to be reading from this. I'm going to read for about maybe 20 minutes, and then we'll segue into questions. So please feel free to ask your questions during that time. And I'm going to start with chapter 1. I will not be able to get through the whole of chapter 1 because it is super long. But hopefully I can stop on a good cliffhanger. So, all right, so let's get right to it. Chapter 1, starting with Manhattan and the Battle of FDR Drive. He forgets his own name somewhere in the tunnel to Penn Station. He doesn't notice at first. Too busy with all the stuff people usually do when they're about to reach their train stop, cleaning up the pretzel bags and plastic bottles of breakfast, stuffing his loose laptop power cord into a pocket of his messenger bag, making sure he's gotten his suitcase down from the rack, then having a momentary panic attack before remembering that he's only got one suitcase. The other was shipped ahead and will be waiting for him at his apartment up in Inwood, where his roommate already is, having arrived a few weeks before. They're both going to be grad students at, uh, huh, he's forgotten his school's name. Anyway, orientation is on Thursday, which gives him 5 days to get settled into his new life in New York. He's really going to need those days too, sounds like. As the train slows to a halt, people are murmuring and whispering, appearing intently at their phones and tablets with worried looks on their faces. Something about a bridge accident, terrorism, just like 9/11. He'll be living and working uptown, so it shouldn't impact him too much, but still, it's maybe not the best time to move here. But when is it ever a good time to make a new life in New York City? He'll cope. He'll more than cope. The train stops and he's first through the door. He's excited, but trying to play it cool. In the city, he will be completely on his own, free to sink or swim. He has colleagues and family members who think of this as exile, abandonment, although in the flurry of the moment he cannot remember any of those people's names or faces. But that doesn't matter, because they can't understand. They know him as he was and maybe who he is now. New York is his future. It's hot on the platform and crowded on the escalator, but he feels fine. Which is why it's so weird when he reaches the top of the escalator and suddenly, the instant his foot touches the polished concrete flooring, the whole world inverts. Everything in his vision seems to tilt, and the ugly ceiling fluorescence turns stark, and the floor kind of heaves. It happens fast. The world pulls inside out, and his stomach drops and his ears fill with a titanic, many-voiced roar. It's a familiar sound to a degree. Anyone who's been to a stadium during a big game has heard something similar. Madison Square Garden sits on top of Penn Station, so maybe that's it. This sound is bigger, though. Millions of people instead of thousands, and all of those voices doubled back on each other and swelling and shifting into layers beyond sound, into color and shaking and emotion, until he claps his hands over his ears and shuts his eyes, but it just keeps coming. But amid all of the cacophony, there is a through line, a repeated motif of sound and word and idea. One voice screaming fury. Fuck you! You don't belong here! This city is mine! Get out! And the young man wonders in confused horror, me? Am I the one that doesn't belong? There is no answer, and the doubt within him becomes an unignorable backbeat of its own. All at once, the roar is gone. A new roar, closer and echoing and indescribably smaller, has replaced it. Some of it is recorded, blaring from PA speakers overhead. New Jersey Transit train southbound, stopping at Newark Airport, now boarding on track 5. The rest is the sound of a gigantic space full of people going about their business. He remembers then as it resolves around him, Penn Station. He does not remember how he ended up on one knee beneath a train schedule sign, with a shaking hand plastered over his face. Wasn't he on an escalator? He also doesn't remember ever before seeing the two people who are crouched in front of him. He frowns at them. Did you just tell me to get out of the city? No, I said, do you want me to call 911? Says the woman. She's offering water. She looks more skeptical than worried, like maybe he's faking whatever weird faint or fit that's apparently made him fall over in the middle of Penn Station. No. He shakes his head, trying to focus. Neither water nor the police will fix weird voices in his head or hallucinations caused by train exhaust or whatever he's experiencing. What happened? You just kind of went sideways, says the man bent over him. He's a portly, middle-aged, pale-skinned Latino. Heavy New York accent, kindly tone. We caught you and pulled you over here. Oh, everything's still weird. The world isn't spinning anymore, but that terrible layered roar is still in his head, just muted now and overlaid by the local and perpetual cacophony that is Penn Station. I think I'm fine? Yeah, you don't sound too sure, the man says. That's because he's not. He shakes his head, then shakes it again when the woman pushes the water bottle forward. I just had some on the train. Low blood sugar, maybe. She takes the water bottle away and looks thoughtful. There's a little girl crouched beside her, he notices belatedly, and the two of them are nearly mirrors of each other, both black-haired, freckled, frank-faced Asian people. When was the last time you ate? Like 20 minutes ago? He doesn't feel dizzy or weak either. He feels new, he murmurs, without thinking. I feel new. The portly man and frank-faced woman look at each other while the little girl throws him a judgy look, complete with lifted eyebrow. Are you new here? Asks the portly man. Yeah? Oh no. My bags! But they're right there. The Good Samaritans have kindly pulled them off the escalator too and positioned them nearby out of the flow of traffic. There's a kind of surreality to the moment as he finally realizes he's having this blackout or delusion or whatever it is in the middle of a crowd of thousands. Nobody seems to notice except these three people. He feels alone in the city. He is seen and cared for in the city. The contrast is going to take some getting used to. You must have gotten your hands on some of the really good drugs, the woman says. She's grinning, though. That's okay, isn't it? That's what'll keep her from calling 911. He remembers reading somewhere that New York's got an involuntary commitment law that can hold people for weeks, so it's probably a good idea to reassure his would-be rescuers as to his clarity of mind. Sorry about this, he says, pushing to his feet. Maybe I didn't eat enough or something. I'll go to an urgent care clinic. Then it happens again. The station lurches beneath his feet, and suddenly it is in ruins. There's no one around. A cardboard book display in front of the convenience store has fallen over, spilling Stephen King hardcovers everywhere. He hears girders in the surrounding structure groan, dust and pebbles falling to the floor as something in the ceiling cracks. The fluorescent lights flicker and jerk, one of the overhead fixtures threatening to fall from the ceiling. He inhales to cry a warning. Blink. Everything is fine again. None of the people around him react. He stares at the ceiling for a moment, then back at the man and woman. They are still staring at him. They saw him react to whatever he was seeing, but they did not see the ruined station themselves. The portly guy has a hand on his arm because he apparently swayed a little. Psychotic breaks must be hell on inner ear imbalance. You want to carry bananas, the portly guy suggests. Potassium, good for you. Or at least some real food, the woman agrees, nodding. You probably just ate chips, right? I don't like that overpriced crap from the train dining car either, but at least it'll keep you from falling over. I like the hot dogs, the little girl says. They're crap, baby, but I'm glad you like them. She takes the little girl's hand. We've got to go. You good? Yeah, he says. But seriously, thanks for helping me. You hear all kinds of stuff about how rude New Yorkers are, but thanks. We're only assholes to people who are assholes first, she says, but she smiles as she says it. Then she and the little girl wander off. The portly man claps him on the shoulder. Well, you don't look like you're gonna chuck. Want me to get you something to eat or some juice or something? Or a banana? He adds the latter pointedly. No thanks. I'm feeling better, really. The portly man looks skeptical, then blinks as something new occurs to him. It's okay, you know, if you don't got money. I'll spot you. Oh no, I'm good. He hefts his messenger bag, which he remembers costing almost $1,600. Portly guy looks at it blankly. Whoops. There's probably sugar in this. There's a plastic Starbucks tumbler in the bag, sloshing faintly. He drinks from it to reassure Portly guy. The coffee is cold and disgusting. He belatedly remembers refilling it sometime yesterday before he got on the train back home in... That's when he realizes he can't remember where he came from. And he tries, but he still can't remember the school he's here to attend. And this is when it finally hits him that he doesn't know his own name. As he sits there, floored by this triple epiphany of nothingness, the portly guy is turning up his nose at the tumbler. Get some real coffee while you're here, he says. From a good Boricua shop, yeah? Excuse me. Get some home food while you're at it. Anyway, what's your name? Oh, He rubs his neck and pretends to have a desperate need to stretch while, quietly panicking, he looks around and tries to think of something. He can't believe this is happening. Who the hell forgets their own name? All he can come up with is fake names go or generic ones like Bob or Jimmy. He's about to say Jimmy arbitrarily, but then, in his visual flailing, his eyes snag on something. I'm, Manny, he blurts. You? Douglas. Portly guy has his hands on his hips, obviously considering something. Finally, he pulls out his wallet and hands over a business card. Douglas Acevedo, plumber. Oh, sorry, I don't have a card. Haven't started my new job yet. It's okay, Douglas says. He still looks thoughtful. Look, a lot of us were new here once. You need anything, you let me know, okay? Seriously, it's fine. Place to crash, good food, a good church, whatever. It's unbelievably kind. Manny doesn't bother to hide his surprise. Whoa, wow, man. You don't know me from Adam. I could be a serial killer or something. Douglas chuckles. Yeah, somehow I'm not figuring you for the violent type. You look... He falters, and then his expression softens a little. You look like my son. I'm just doing for you what I'd want somebody doing for him, right? Somehow Manny knows Douglas's son is dead. Right, Manny says softly. Thanks again. Está bien, mano. No te preocupes. Sorry, my Spanish is not good. He wanders off then heads in the direction of the ACE train. Manny watches him go, pocketing the card and thinking about three things. The first is the belated realization that the guy thought he was Puerto Rican. The second is the realization that he might have to take Douglas up on that offer of a place to crash, especially if he doesn't remember the address of his apartment in the next few minutes. The third thing makes him look up at the arrivals and departures board, where he found the word that just became his new name. He doesn't tell Douglas the full name because these days only white women can have given names like that without getting laughed at. But even in modified form, this word, this identity, feels more true than anything else he's ever claimed in his life. It is what he has been without realizing. It is who he is. It is everything he's ever needed to be. The full word is Manhattan. In the bathroom, under the sodium lights, he meets himself for the first time. It's a good face. He pretends to be extra meticulous about washing his hands, not a bad thing to be in a smelly Penn Station public bathroom, and turns his face from side to side, checking himself out from all angles. It's clear why the dude figured him for Puerto Rican. His skin is yellowy brown, his hair kinky but loose coiled enough that if he let it grow out, it might dangle. He could pass for Douglas's son, maybe. He's not Puerto Rican, though. He remembers that much. He's dressed preppy, in khakis, a button-down with rolled-up sleeves, and there's a sports jacket draped over his bag for when the AC is too high, maybe, since it's summertime and probably 90 degrees outside. He looks like he's somewhere in that ageless yawn between not a kid anymore and 30, although probably toward the latter end of it to judge by a couple of random gray threads peppered along his hairline. Brown eyes behind dark brown rimmed glasses. The glasses make him look professorial. Sharp cheekbones, strong, even features, smile lines developing around his mouth. He's a good-looking guy. Generic all-American boy, non-white version, nicely nondescript. Convenient, he thinks. Wondering why he thinks this makes him pause in mid-hand wash, frowning. Okay, no, he's got enough weirdness to deal with right now. He grabs his suitcase to leave the bathroom. An older guy at the urinal stares at him all the way out. At the top of the next escalator, this one leading up to 7th Avenue, it happens a third time. This episode is better in some ways and worse in others, because Manny feels a wave of whatever it is coming on as he reaches the top of the escalator. He has enough time to take his suitcase and get himself over to some kind of digital information kiosk, so he'll be out of the way while he leans against it and shudders. This time, he doesn't hallucinate, not at first, but he hurts all of a sudden. It's an awful, sick feeling, a spreading chill starting from a point low on his left flank. The sensation is familiar. He remembers it from the last time he got stabbed. Wait, he got stabbed? Frantically, he pulls up his shirt tail and looks at the place where the pain is worst, but there's no blood. There's nothing. The wound is all in his head or somewhere else. As if this is a summons, abruptly the New York that everyone sees flickers into the New York that only he can see. Actually, they're both present, one lightly superpositioned over the other, and they flick back and forth a little before finally settling into a peculiar dual boot of reality. Before Manny lie two Seventh Avenues. They're easy to distinguish because they have different palettes and moods. In one, there are hundreds of people within view and dozens of cars and at least 6 chain stores that he recognizes. Normal New York. In the other, there are no people and some unfathomable disaster has taken place. He doesn't see bodies or anything ominous. There's just no one around. It's not clear anyone ever existed in this place. Maybe the buildings here just appeared, sprung forth fully formed from their foundations instead of being built. Ditto the streets, which are empty and badly cracked. A traffic light dangles loose from an overhead fixture, swinging on its cable, but switching from red to green in perfect tandem with its other version. The sky is dimmer, almost as if it's nearly sunset and not just post-noon, and the wind is faster. Clouds boil and churn across the sky like they're late for the cloud revival meeting. Cool, Manny murmurs. This whole episode probably represents some kind of psychotic break on his part, but he cannot deny that what he sees is gorgeous and terrifying. Weird New York. He likes it, regardless. But something is wrong with it. He must go somewhere, do something, or all of the bifurcated beauty that he sees will die. He knows this suddenly, more surely than instinct. I have to go, he murmurs to himself in surprise. His voice sounds strange, tinny and sort of stretched out. Maybe he's slurring? Maybe it's the peculiar echo of his voice from the walls of 2 different Penn Station entryway walls in 2 different Penn Stations. Hey, says a guy in a neon green button-down nearby. Manny blinks at him. Normal New York abruptly resumes, weird New York vanishing for the moment. It's still there somewhere, nearby. The button-down is part of a uniform. The guy is carrying a sign hawking bike rentals at tourists. He faces Manny with open hostility. Puke your drunk ass off somewhere else. Manny tries to straighten, but he knows he's still a little diagonal. I'm not drunk. He's just seeing juxtaposed multiple realities while being plagued by inexplicable compulsions and phantom sensations. Well, then take your high ass somewhere else. Yes, that's a good idea. He needs to go east. He turns in that direction, following instincts he never had before a few minutes ago. What's that away? He asks bike guy. My left nut, bike guy says. That's south, laughs another bike rental hawker nearby. Bike guy rolls his eyes and grabs his crotch at her in the iconic New York Sign Language gesture of suck my dick. The attitude's starting to grate. Manny says, if I rent a bike, will you tell me what's in that direction? Bike guy suddenly all smiles. Sure. No, sir, says bike woman, serious now as she comes over. Sir, I'm sorry, but we cannot rent a bike to someone who appears to be intoxicated or ill. Company policy. Do you need me to call 911? People in New York sure like to call 911. No, I can walk. I need to get to FDR Drive. FDR Drive. The woman's expression turns skeptical. You want to walk to FDR Drive? The hell kind of tourist are you, sir? He ain't no tourist, says he of the southern left nut as he chin points at Manny. Look at him. Manny's never been to New York before, at least as far as he knows. I just need to get there, fast. Take a cab, then, says the woman. Taxi stands right there. Need me to grab one for you? Excuse me. Manny shivers a little, feeling the rise of something new within himself. Not sickness this time, or rather, not just sickness, since that terrible stabbish ache hasn't faded. What comes instead is a shift in perception. Beneath his... Ow, bit my tongue. Oh, gosh. Wow, got it good. All right, back to the reading. Sorry. Beneath his hand, which rests on the kiosk, he hears a soft rattle of decades worth of flyers. The kiosk has nothing on it. There's a sign, "Do not post bills." He hears what used to be there. Traffic's flying past on 7th, hurrying to get through the light before a million pedestrians start trying to go to Macy's or K-Town karaoke and barbecue. All these things belong. They are a rightness. But his eyes stutter over a TGI Fridays and he twitches a little, lip curling in involuntary distaste. Something about its facade feels foreign, intrusive, jarring. A tiny, cluttered shoe repair shop next to it does not elicit the same feeling, nor does the vape shop next door. Just the chain stores that Manny sees. A Foot Locker, a Sbarro, all of the sorts of stores one normally finds at a low-end suburban mall. Except these mall stores are here in the heart of Manhattan, and their presence is not truly harmful, but irritating, like paper cuts or little quick slaps to the face. The subway sign, though, feels right and real. The billboards, too, no matter what's on them. The cabs and the flow of cars and people, all these things soothe the irritants somehow. He draws in a deep breath that reeks of hot garbage and acrid steam belching from a manhole cover nearby, and it's foul, but it's right. More than right. Suddenly he's better. The sick feeling recedes a little, and his side dulls from stabbing pain into cold prickles that only hurt when he moves. "Thanks," he says to Bike Woman, straightening and grabbing his roller bag. "But my ride's coming." Wait, how does he know that? The woman shrugs. Both of them turn away to resume hawking bikes. Manny walks toward the area where people are waiting for lifts or Ubers. He has both apps on his phone, but he hasn't used them. There should be nothing here for him. However, a moment later, a cab rolls to a stop right in front of him. It's like a cab out of an old movie, smooth and bulbous and huge, with a black and white checkered strip along its near flank. Bike guy does a double take, then whistles. "A checker! Haven't seen one of those since I was a kid." "It's for me," Manny says unnecessarily, and reaches for the door. It's locked. "I need this open," he thinks. The door lock clicks open. So that's new, but he'll process it later. All right, I'm going to stop there. All right, so that's it for the reading. I hope you guys enjoyed. That was from chapter 1 of The City We Became. I have not yet listened to the audiobook version of The City We Became, which is read by Robin Miles. I'm sure she did a much better job than me because she's an amazing actress. But that said, I hope that I did somewhat well. All right, so now let's start looking at the questions. We have 19. Good googly moogly. All right, that's a lot of questions. And we've got about half an hour, so I will go as quickly as I can. Several of these already, I can see, however, are not quick answers. All right, well, we'll try. All right, so the question that seems to have the most votes right now is, what new authors in science fiction are you most excited by? Oh, see, I hate recommendations questions. No offense. There's absolutely nothing wrong with recommendations questions. It's just that it's really hard for me to think of names in the moment. And I almost always forget somebody I genuinely like or care about. I will say I did do a New York Times review column for about 3 years or so, maybe 2 or 3 years ago. There are a lot of new authors in it because I deliberately tried to make sure that the column covered like half established authors and half new authors at any given time. So you might want to go back and take a look at that. There are a lot of good names in there that you should be keeping an eye on. Off the top of my head, which I am bad at doing, goodness. I'm sorry. This is why I'm not good at this kind of question. I'm sorry. I'm trying to think of the name of the woman who did The Prey of Gods. Nikki Drayden. Okay, that took me a second. So Nikki Drayden, I'm really liking her stuff. Really kind of gonzo and beautifully written. I'm a big fan of Cassandra Khaw, Khaw. who does this incredible, slightly gross horror comedy series about a chef for demons. Um, let's see. I recently read Docile by K.M. I'm going to mangle his name. Zipporah. um, we're hopefully going to have an event soon between me and him where we'll have a conversation about how to pronounce his name so that I don't keep mangling it. But Docile, many trigger warnings on that. But it's a good near science fiction story about the horrors of unrestricted predatory capitalism. I will leave it at that, but it's more complex than that. So that's as many as I can think of off the top of my head. All right, let's see. Next question. You are one of the most incredible world builders I've ever read. Why, thank you. I would love to hear some of the major principles that you use to do your world building. Where do you start? What are the most important elements? Well, I give a 2-hour lecture on this. So it's, again, this is not a quick answer. You can actually find a version of that 2-hour lecture that I do on world building on Wired's website. If you just do a search for like Jemisin and Wired, you will find a talk that I did. Now, this was aimed at the Wired audience. It was not aimed at writers. It was aimed at basically like journalists. So it was a version of the talk I usually do, but it was not the exact same talk that I normally do to writers at like Clarion and things like that. But you can find it online and you will see some of the techniques that I use. So I hope that's helpful to you. All right, next question. Are we all tired of talking about quarantine routines? Or can I ask what your quarantine routine for writing is right now and how you're staying sane and what snacks you have? Well, okay, I don't have a routine right now because this is a period when I would have been normally on a book tour. And I had deliberately planned to not do any writing while I was on the book tour because travel and book touring and talking to large crowds is sort of draining to me. And so now I find myself surprised at home with lots of time to write, and I'm so stressed as I pay attention to what's going on in the world that it's difficult to actually do so. Especially given that, like I said, I had sort of planned to not be writing during this time. So I'm not doing any writing right now, and I'm allowing myself that freedom because, you know, when you're stressed, and this is the part of me that's a counselor. When you're stressed and when you're worried about like the basics of daily living, like health and how much food do I have? Do I need to buy more beans? You know, the usual questions. What happens when the toilet paper runs out? You know, when you're worried about sort of baseline questions, this is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's difficult to be creative when you're stressed about like the basics. So, you know, let yourself stress about the basics a little bit, then get the basics settled, and then you'll be able to write again. In terms of snacks, I should not be eating these, but I have been eating lots of chocolate covered almonds. But mostly I've been trying to like make sure that I don't like just snack all the time. I've been doing a lot of coffee and tea. That helps a lot. That's about it. So hope that helps. All right. Wait. The questions just moved. Okay. All right. Oh, I see. They're moving them into the answered column. I get it. Okay. So next question is, how do you think about your legacy fitting into the very racist, very sexist history of the genre? Obviously, there are. Sorry, I'm always like fascinated by Alex Trebek saying genre. Okay, I think I said that right. Anyway, obviously, there are amazing voices in speculative fiction's pantheon, but the dominant ones tend to include narratives that are destructive and inequitable. Yours tend not to. How do you deal with, for example, Orson Scott Card, whose influence can't be denied, but whose bigotry, racism, sexism, homophobia, etc., can also not be denied? I'm not sure what you mean by how do I deal with it. I came into this genre as a child. I slowly started reading my way through the classics or the canon that everybody recommended to me. At first, I did not understand the problem, and then as I grew older and more mature, I began to realize, oh yeah, a lot of these motherfuckers are racist, and some other ists. And they are part of the canon. A lot of my writing is in conversation with that canon, and so therefore, I feel the need to address it directly. I don't believe that people should not read these things. Obviously, there's some Lovecraftian influence, for example, in The City We Became. And you're not going to fully get that influence if you haven't actually read some Lovecraft. Now, that said, you don't have to read Lovecraft to fully enjoy it. It's just that, like, you need to understand that that's who I'm in conversation with. And Lovecraft, if you don't know, was ginormously racist, ginormously everythingist, anti-Semitic, even though he was married to a Jewish woman. The man hated, like, the Portuguese. I don't even really fully understand why. Anyway, so you don't have to read those classics unless you are planning to engage with the multiple layers of meaning that they have exerted upon the genre. I think there are enough new and good classics out there that you can skip them if you want. But in my case, I've chosen to engage with them and speak back to them through my writing. So that works for me. I hope that answers the question. All right, next up. In the vein of The City We Became, how would you describe the soul and sentience of Washington, D.C.? Honestly, I did live briefly I went to grad school at the University of Maryland at College Park. So I was in the DC, Maryland, Virginia area for like 2 years. And I was so knuckled down with grad school that I didn't get a good read on the city proper. So I can't speak to that. That's a thing that you feel when you live in the city. I didn't. I lived in College Park. That's a thing that you get when you live in the city, when you've been there more than just for a few visits. Basically, all I did was run into town, fuck around in Adams Morgan. Well, not literally, but anyway, explore the city a few times, visited, like different places in the city, went shopping. I didn't do anything really in particular there. And DC still, to me, feels like it's forming. Like, I couldn't get a good read on its personality during the brief time that I was there. That's a question you might want to ask of some actual DCians. Is that what you call them? I don't know. Anyway, that's a question you might want to ask of some actual DC people. So, sorry. All right, next question. Do you ever get to a point in your writing editing when you're just sick of looking at a piece of work? If so, what do you do then? Yes, this is perfectly normal. In fact, a few years ago for NaNoWriMo, I wrote an article called The Chasm of Doubt, where I talked about this being a normal process that writers go through. And I was talking about the fact that when you start writing something, you're kind of on an emotional high, because in order to commit yourself to writing a whole novel, you have to think it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. You got to feel like really good about it. But the process of writing is not romantic. It is not glamorous. It is not constantly fun. And inevitably, as you begin the process of writing, your mood is going to dip. And it's going to end up getting at some point pretty low. And yeah, you will be sick of looking at your work. You will want to delete it. You will want to fire it into the sun. When I was in the middle of working on the Broken Earth series, the 5th season, I had one of those chasms of doubt that was like epic, the biggest I've ever had. And friends of mine staged an intervention where they dragged me to brunch, and over biscuits, we had a deep conversation about the fact, no, Nora, you cannot delete your novel. So yeah, that's a perfectly normal thing to do. What fixes it is finishing the book and then starting the process of revisions, at least for me. Revisions start to pull you back up towards, oh wait, this actually does feel good. This is actually the vision that I had when I first started writing this thing. So get through revisions and then you will love it again. I hope that helps. Okay, so next question. I'm really enjoying the book. I'm only a few chapters in. Excuse me, I should read people's names, shouldn't I? Next question is from Carrie. I'm really enjoying the book. I'm only a few chapters in, but I'm getting a very American Gods vibe. What inspired you to base this in New York City? The fact that I live in New York City mostly. But I was also kind of speaking to the fact that just as I was speaking with the DC question a little while ago, excuse me, whenever you move to a new place, whenever anybody moves to a new place, this is not a thing that I am the only one that feels, I'm pretty sure. When I move into a new city or visit a new city, I often feel like an instantaneous sense of either, this place, its personality is congruent with mine. We would get along. I like the city and it likes me. We might be able to live together. It's almost like the moment of attraction that you feel when you meet a potential partner. Or that I feel. Not everybody is, I know. But that said, and I did not feel that like with DC, for example, but I did feel it with New York. I felt it with New Orleans. I felt it with Tokyo when I visited there once many years ago. I felt it with San Francisco, although that was many, many years ago before like the current gentrification is kind of like stripped a lot of the city of what it used to be. And so, and a lot of people feel this. So I just wanted to kind of articulate that because to me, that is energy. That is a sense of the city's personality. It's not speculative to me that cities have souls. So I wanted to try and encapsulate that. And see what I could do with it. So, many of you have probably felt something similar. Boston did not like me. Personality was not congruent with mine, but I lived there for 8 years, trying to make it work. And, maybe I should have given up on that relationship sooner. But yeah, so that's basically what I was trying to speak to. Okay, let's see. Next up, from Ashley, how did your work as a psychologist influence your character creation? Every aspect of my life influences my writing. So everything from people that I meet to being a counselor, to reading other books, to playing video games influences things like character creation for me. So it's difficult for me to sort out which pieces of my life experience are informing which pieces of my artistic experience. I'm not going to say that like it hasn't helped to have a good solid understanding of like how human development on a psychological level occurs. I'm not going to pretend that, I didn't just quote Maslow's hierarchy of needs a little while ago, because these kinds of things do inform how I think about the world. But also so does, just my experience of meeting people, and sometimes people are good and sometimes people are bad, and, that kind of thing. So it's not that discrete. I don't know if that answers the question or not. All right. So next, from Rick, we have, is there anything you would like to write but feel you can't because there's no market for it, such as poetry or short stories? No. I don't write poetry, but obviously there's a market for short stories. I write novels. That's what I feel like writing. It's been fine. So no, sorry, short answer there. Let's see. In the Broken Earth trilogy, the Orogenes really are dangerous. Is the fear towards an inherently dangerous minority justified? How does that impact what you would like your writing to say about minorities when you do world building? Excellent question from Meredith. I was deliberately playing with a concept when I decided to make the oppressed group actually dangerous. Because around the time that I was kind of working on this was when like Ferguson was happening. And those of you who remember all the stuff that was happening with Ferguson with Michael Brown may remember that during the trial, Darren, whatever the fuck his name was, the cop who shot Michael Brown, described him as superhuman, described him as like a Hulk, and shot him multiple times because he felt that one bullet would not be enough. So, what I was kind of trying to engage with is the fact that, Black people are not superhuman, but people react to us as if we are. and that's terrible. There are those who think that it's somehow a compliment to say that Black women are strong. Well, but that treats us like we're not human. And like we don't have moments of vulnerability and pain and suffering. There are doctors who genuinely believe that Black people and other people of color cannot feel pain to the same degree that white people do, and they under-medicate people who are chronic pain sufferers or acute pain sufferers. So I guess that's what I was kind of engaging with. It doesn't matter whether we genuinely are dangerous if people are reacting to us as if we are. And so therefore it doesn't matter if Hitler came up with the idea that Jewish people were somehow involved in this massive cabal, conspiracy, whatever, and then used that as justification for the Holocaust. Because it doesn't matter that they were just ordinary people trying to live their lives. He still killed them. And so this is the thing. If you are engaging with oppression, you have to engage with not just the reality, but the appearance, and the myths that are spun to justify oppression. And that's really what I wanted to kind of get at. Slight spoiler for the Broken Earth series. It does become clear later on in the series that the orogenes are dangerous, but only when you take them out of context. When you raise orogene children, for example, away from their parents, who have the ability to kind of stop them from doing whatever dangerous stuff that they could do, when you take them out of in this completely unnatural way out of the family settings that they're supposed to be in, of course they're dangerous. Everybody's dangerous when you take them out of context, or when you take them away from the systems and the support networks that they need. And so that's really kind of what I was trying to get at. That's a complex answer, and I'm realizing that I have talked too long on this one, so let's move on so I can try and get all of them. But I hope that answered your question. All right. Next question is from Rob. We're sadly living in a speculative fiction time. How can we live it and write about it while keeping it from overwhelming us? Yeah, when I figure that out, I'll tell you. It's an ongoing hot mess. But I and friends of mine have talked about the fact that writer friends of mine have talked about the fact that basically it's difficult for us to write in a world that keeps turning into a plot that we would not have been allowed to publish. I said something joking about this the other night, that I could not have imagined a scenario in which basically the president of the United States is advocating for the deaths of millions, so that the economy can be a little better. My editor would never have allowed me to write a book like that because it's too unrealistic. It's too sort of cacklingly, mustache twirlingly evil. And yet that's where we are. And I'm still trying to figure out how to cope with it. I got no answers. I'm sorry. Let's see what we can figure out together, I guess. All right, next question. Throughout many of your books and stories, you eloquently eviscerate white supremacy. Why, thank you. As readers, what can we do beyond just purchasing books authored by historically underrepresented voices to attack white supremacy in literature? First and foremost, I would say the simplest thing to do is to elevate the voices of underrepresented authors who are making those arguments already. There is sometimes the danger of people who are coming from privileged groups sort of talking over people who are already making these points. But the other thing that you can do is push the industry, push the book the book retailers, the book distributors, the book publishers, the agents, whatever, push every aspect of the industry to become more representative, to hire people who look like the book reading populace, which is majority female, which is, and yes, the publishing industry is majority female at sort of like the ground level, at the editor level. At the executive level, it's mostly white dudes. So, push the industry to become more representative. Wow. And then maybe it will start to do better about producing work that is more representative. That's all I can say in a quick answer. So hope that helps. All right, next up, Amber D asks, "What are the chances we'll be able to see the Inheritance trilogy on TV/movies in the future? I would love to see the series visualized, and there's not nearly enough sci-fi TV/movies with a woman of color lead." I don't know. Nearly all of my works at this point have sold TV movie rights. I cannot tell you specifically which ones. I cannot tell you to whom in every case. The one that is publicly well known is the Broken Earth series sold to TNT. But at this point, nearly all of my stuff is sold, with the exception of the Inheritance trilogy. And I suspect that is because the Inheritance trilogy, I think it's a combination of things. One is it was never a bestseller. It's a good seller. It's a very steady seller. That series of books has been out for like 10 years at this point, and its sales kind of like went up and then plateaued. They've never gone down. It has sold steadily for 10 solid years, which is fantastic, because keeps me in rent. Yay. But that said, but it's never sold. So I think that's partly because it is not a bestseller. Also because it would require a lot of special effects. I truly don't know. I think it just, for whatever reason, it never got any particular Hollywoodians' attention. So, you guys know somebody in Hollywood, put in a good word. That's all I got. All right, next up, were you a daydreamer as a child? If so, did the adults around you encourage that? From Paul. I was a horrific daydreamer, yes. And I say it that way because it kept getting me in trouble in school. So my teachers and so on were not fans of me looking out the window and imagining things. And all that did was teach me to daydream in a more hidden way. So I would do things like, like take the book cover off of my textbooks and put it onto the novel that I would be reading from the library. And so it would look like I was reading my textbook, and I would sit down and I would be reading this intently, and I'd be like daydreaming and, like off in another world. But I'd be like staring down at this thing, deeply concentrating or off in another world. And they would think that I was reading my textbook. So, and, so I did, this is back in the days when they used to give you conduct points on your report card. I don't know if that's still a thing. And I would always get points dinged for daydreaming. But my father, who is an artist, kind of understood that was just sort of, that's a normal and almost necessary part of a young artist's development. You've got to sort of process the world slowly but surely. And so, yeah, that's what I did. All right, let's move on. We may be able to get through these questions if I speed them up. All right, so Meg asks, how do you decide which of your short stories to turn into novels? I don't. The stories decide that. Generally, I think of ideas, I think in novels. I do not think in short stories. The ideas that pop into my head are normally elaborate and spun out and peopled with large groups of folks. And so in order to turn them into a short story, I have to cut a piece of that out and focus on that. And sometimes I am able to do so, and sometimes I am not. When I am not, then I will write a short story to kind of see if the novel is strong enough to support the time investment of a novel, because a novel is at least a year's time. And, sometimes I'll write the short story as like a tester to see if I want to do a novel. The City We Became was that for the book that became The City. The City Born Great was that for the book that became The City We Became. And then I figure out from there what I want to do. So that's it. Right. Next question. Oh, someone just texted me. Okay, no. Next question. Oh, wait. I missed it. There was something. Wasn't there another one? Oh, right. Well, okay. What's a question you wish we would have asked? What did we miss from Brian? that is a trick question. I'm not answering that one. I'm actually kidding. I don't have thoughts like that. Sorry. So I'm going to move on to the next question. From David, since Far Sector 5 just arrived, I have to ask, how did your writing for DC Comics come about? Were you a fan of Green Lantern growing up? Is it open-ended, or do you have an idea about how long you'd like to craft this story? Loving it so far. Thank you. Basically, DC called me after I won the first or maybe second Hugo. And I was not a fan of Green Lantern growing up. I actually, when I was, up through college, I read superhero comics, but I was not super interested in them after college, mostly because around college is when like that whole period of like, you had to follow 6 different comics to kind of keep one storyline in mind. And they kept releasing them with like foil covers to justify a $10 price. And I was a poor college student. I didn't have time or money for that. So I quit superhero comics around that time and then started reading more sort of artsy fantasy comics like these days, like Saga, Monstrous, stuff like that. Pretty Deadly. Big fan of those. So I was so not feeling Green Lantern. But then Gerard Way contacted me after the first Hugo and said that he had this idea for a Green Lantern who would be the first Black female Green Lantern, that she would be in a faraway sector of space. She would be kind of the lone sheriff on the frontier. I mean, he gave me some basics of what he had been thinking, and like the idea just kind of spun out of my head from there. So I just decided to go with that. There are 12 issues written, so yes, there is a definitive end to it. I am ending deliberately with some open-endedness, though, in case if it's a hit, we will possibly continue. We will discuss what we want to do with it from there. All right, we got 1 minute, and so far looks like a bunch of questions left. Oh, someone explained to me how to pronounce KM's Spera. Really? Oh, okay. Thank you, Mary Baker. I'm going to pick a question at random. Let's go with, I haven't read the book yet, but what's the motivation for having a non-New Yorker be the soul of the city? He's the soul of Manhattan, not the soul of the city. So the soul of the city is in the short story, The City Born Great. We meet him. He is actually a native New Yorker. But the non-New Yorker is the soul of Manhattan because newcomers are so much a part of New York City. That experience that I read to you, that experience of coming here, wanting to start a new life, being excited about doing so, coming from God knows where, is so much a part of life in New York that I felt like that is also something that I had to address. And I'm not originally from New York. I feel like I'm roughly 50% New Yorker, but New Yorker is the kind of city that embraces newcomers. It needs its newcomers. And I do make that point over the course of the story. So that's just part of the character of the city. All right. So we're at time. I don't know if you guys want to go maybe like a few minutes overboard to try and see if we can answer all these questions or not. Are you okay? Great.
You can definitely keep going.
Oh, all right then.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, then let's see if we can do this in like the next 5-10 minutes. All right. All right. So I'm going to go back up to the top here. Patrice asks, this is a time of great change, and you're brilliant at conjuring characters who navigate big shifts. Thank you. What are your thoughts about navigating this moment in time for we mortals? Speaking as a fellow mortal, I don't fucking know. Pardon my language, but this is strange territory that we're all in. Right now, though, and this strange territory, it does help me to put it in perspective and to remember that this is a thing that lots of groups of people, lots of other countries have had to deal with. Lots of people within our country have had to deal with. My father grew up in Jim Crow. His parents grew up in the Depression. This is a thing that this is the thing of our time. Is that we're going to have to figure out how to navigate a society in which our leaders are actively trying to kill us, and in which, so is nature. um, and how we come together on this and how we figure out how to weather it will define us as a country or a people or a species. We will see. So I have no specific answers for you. I appreciate that you think I do, but I'm just an ordinary person too, and I don't know what the hell to do right now. All right, next question from Emily regarding your short story collection. Pardon me. What did you take away from writing The City Born Great when starting The City We Became? I'm not sure what you mean by take away. The City Born Great is the same story that forms the prologue of The City We Became. The only thing that's missing is the 50 years later coda that exists on the short story. If you read the short story in How Long Till Black Future Month or at Tor.com. Otherwise, it is literally the same story. And The City We Became is basically a sequel to that short story. So I'm not sure what you meant there, but yeah, that's the takeaway. Is it's the same story continued. All right, next question. What are books / films / stories that capture the essence of a city? New York, DC, Chicago. I honestly haven't seen a lot that do. I've watched lots of anime that actually capture like Tokyo and I think that may capture cities in Japan, although I haven't visited some of them, so I can't verify that. But I know that feeling of Tokyo is something that I have seen showcased in a number of anime films and manga. I will say that Hollywood has had as much shaping of New York as it has captured New York. Sometimes accurately, sometimes wildly wrong. But things like the repeated tendency to inflict horrible disasters on New York. I was actually just talking to my dad today about all of this because I can't see him right now. I'm in self quarantine. But and I want him to be safe. He's in his 70s. But he told me something today that kind of like sort of stirred my thoughts, which is that you're not a New Yorker unless you've lived through a major disaster. um, and I think he's right. I mean, when you look at the things that one of the things that defines New York is the way that New Yorkers react under pressure during like blackouts that we've had in the past. We've had one or two blackouts where there was looting and stuff like that. But for most blackouts, people had parties. They took care of each other. They looked after people in the neighborhood who needed help. 9/11, its meaning and its use have changed over time. But within the city of New York, people tried to help each other for that period of time. There were some ugly things happening with Middle Eastern folks who were visibly so in the city at that point. And there were also incidents of New Yorkers stepping forward to defend them when hateful people tried to attack them. So this is part of New York to me. And I think that a lot of the Hollywood disaster films, like silly shit like Independence Day, that blow up New York, even those kind of manage to capture New York to some degree. So, I'm not recommending Independence Day, but that's an example. All right, and that's from Sonia. Thank you. All right, next up from Sally. How has your own life experience shaped your writing? I'm interested in hearing more about who you are and how that plays into your books or doesn't. That would take an autobiography. I am not really able to answer that one in a quick answer, so sorry. And it's the same thing that happens to every writer, but you need an autobiography to know how their lives shape their writing. And I'm not prepared to write one of those just yet. Sorry. All right, next up. Where do you begin when constructing your worlds? Do you begin with social interaction in the real world that you want to explore, or do you start with a change that you would like to see and then build the story around it? Neither. I think of a story. I write that story. I am not trying to create social change. I am not trying to send a message. I'm trying to just simply tell a good story. And if telling a good story requires me to accurately depict the world as I see and experience it, then I will do that. But at the end of the day, I want to entertain people. I want them riveted because of these fictional events that are happening to these fictional people. I'm not looking to write like a self-help guide or a textbook. So I don't know if that answers your question or not. All right. Thank you, by the way, Mary, for the pronunciation guide for KM's last name. Last question. At the end, if your cats are around, excuse me, can you bring them in so we can virtually coo over them from Rosie? I think, well, I fed them right before this on purpose so that they would not interrupt me in the middle of this session. So I think that they are asleep in various places in the house because when I feed them, they both go into like food coma afterwards. So I'm not going to wake them up so that you can coo over them. I'm sorry. But you know, I will cuddle them just for me after this is all over. So sorry. All right, I do believe that's everything. Thank you, folks, for the really good questions. And I hope that you enjoyed this session as much as I did. I did. I guess I will turn it back over to Politics in Prose. How do we want to do this?
Yeah, I just want to thank NK Jemisin. This was so incredible. We couldn't have asked for a better event, and I know you guys feel the same way. So we just want to thank all of you for joining and let you know about a couple of other events that we have coming up. If you want to go on our calendar at politics-prose.com, all of our live stream events are going to be on there. But for example, at 7 p.m. this Friday, we have Emily St. John Mandel for her new book, The Glassed Hotel. On Saturday at 8 p.m., we have Jen Gotch for her book, The Upside of Being Down. We have Lily King on Monday, the 30th at 6 p.m. And we have a whole slew of others that we really hope you'll tune into. And again, just thank you guys for supporting us. If you have not bought this book, I'm sure her reading already convinced you, and I don't need to, but click the button below to purchase. And again, thank you guys. And Nora, thank you so much. This was amazing.
Sorry, I muted myself. Right. Thank you. I am sad that I wasn't able to see you guys in person. I really did want to do this book tour. But you know, circumstances being what they are, I'm glad that we're at least living in the future enough that we can do this virtually. Thanks again. All right. I'm done. See you guys later. Bye.